Just so that I'm clear, this is not a video about real-life sports being made into video games, like for instance basketball having its 2K series or football holding Madden and CFB as their primary sports game representatives. This also includes games like Super Mario Golf or Backyard Baseball that still base their core gameplays off the rules of a real-world sport, but usually add some sort of wacky take on it to spice things up or add some variety and depth to the game and its mechanics. Nintendo is notorious for doing this with its Super Mario Sports games, which I do think is great, but if it says it's golf, then well, it doesn't count. Furthermore, this is not a video on esports, though some of the games I talk about will have mention of their esports scene and overall competitiveness, respectively, as with sports in general, there's always spectatorship for the highest levels of play. But as an example, just because games like League of Legends and Counter-Strike have absolutely massive esports scenes, I will not be talking about them because what this video is about are games that are made about fake sports, as in sports that don't exist in our non-gaming reality. Games that may look like sports in our world, maybe even taking some inspiration from their rules and environments, but also separates itself enough to distinguish it from any real-world counterpart that may have inspired it in the first place. With that in mind, the best jumping off point for games to demonstrate what I'm talking about has to be Rocket League. In its simplest form, Rocket League could be described as a soccer-like, if that's even a thing, game, with the biggest difference coming from the fact that you play as a car. Does car soccer exist in the real world? Kinda, but if we're being honest about it, no, not anything like Rocket League does. And what Rocket League does right comes from a successful team at Psyonix getting the physics part right of this game. It all feels right. The weight of the cars, the height of the double jump, the way that the boost pushes the cars to maximum speed and even has to work with momentum when being used in the air. The ball feels light, but not so light that it doesn't ever come down. It has a sort of basketball bounce to it. The gameplay focuses on a blend of high-octane shots alongside core fundamentals to build a really solid foundation of a game. The arena is standardized to be the same size to keep matches consistent and even allow for plays to be made off the walls and ceiling, leading to some of the craziest goals that shatter through its skill ceiling. Like real sports, the mechanics and gameplay at higher levels evolve with different eras of the game's lifespan, that then start to trickle down to how newer or lower skill players end up playing at their level. For instance, basketball has had a renaissance of three-point shooting since Steph Curry really started to take over the NBA in 2015. Likewise, players like Jazer really started to popularize the freestyle approach back in the old Freestyle Friday videos. Even something as small as adding car demolitions to the game can add huge layers to the meta on both the offensive and defensive side of the pitch. On top of its gameplay, the stadium environments add a level of immersion to make it feel like you are participating in the world's primary sport. Add a commentator who says things like, "What a save!" and and you have the gold standard for the fake sports video games. The game's unique mechanics means that you, along with everyone else, have to start from the same starting point, and the barrier of entry may be more graspable for new players. I think. I haven't been new to Rocket League since 2016, when everyone was new, so maybe the earlier players are a little better now. Let me know if that is the case in the comments. I honestly could talk about Rocket League for a long time, and I plan to do so at some point in the future, but moving away from the flashiness, but sticking to the uniqueness, I want to talk about Lethal League Blaze. Where Rocket League has a popularity that compares to real sports, a game like Lethal League and its sequel Lethal League Blaze have a popularity more akin to professional dodgeball. Lethal League is a sport that is best described as a mix of baseball and dodgeball, where the goal is to hit a singular ball into your opponents while they are trying to do the same to you. Every hit drives the speed of the ball and eventually turns into a very chaotic few milliseconds when the ball is zipping around at speeds that you can't even register and get hit while mindlessly swinging your baseball bat around. Added mechanics like parrying, throwing, power-ups, and character-specific specials give a huge variety and depth into each character, which I like, because similar to Rocket League car hitboxes, there's more than meets the eye, and picking certain characters can benefit specific playstyles. The game also has a very subversive feel with an art style that is very reminiscent of Jet Set Radio, and a definite underground feel that works really well with the game's tone, and gives it a theme that is very unique among other quote-unquote fighting games, to which I do consider this game to be. It does have an announcer at the character select screen, but stays quiet during the game. There's also never a crowd involved, even on the stage that is a baseball arena. It's stated that you sneak in to play games of Lethal League during non-game days, which also adds to its underground aesthetic. I really do enjoy Lethal League every time I play, even though I'm not super familiar with its more in-depth mechanics, and I haven't even really been talking about anything other than strictly 1v1 mode. You can play with up to 4 players on the screen at a time, and it does have the aspect of pure chaotic fun when there's that many players on screen all swinging at the ball at the same time, especially with a good group of friends. It becomes practically a party fighting game at that point, similar to a game like Super Smash Bros., which does have its own argument for the whole fake sport game. Hear me out. There is an announcer and a crowd beyond stages like Pokemon Stadium. In any given match, certain triggers can cause a crowd of people to gasp or even cheer on specific players during the game. The only part to really argue is whether or not jumping around a stage and fighting would be considered a sport. On one hand, fighting styles such as boxing and MMA does classify itself as a sport, but on the other, what we see in Smash is a lot different than a 2D fighter such as Street Fighter, which is more in line with our real-world fighting, while Smash is more akin to something like sumo wrestling. And is this version of platforming, sumo wrestling, fighting comparable enough to consider it a fake sport? I'd be one to argue that it does. Its mechanics go just as deep as any other fighting game, or even deeper in some cases. I mean, just look at this. I can't even fucking wave dash, man. You may argue that this violates the rules I specifically said wouldn't count in the beginning of the video, like how Mario Golf doesn't count because it just takes after golf. But my biggest argument is that it doesn't directly draw inspiration and title itself after a specific sport. It's just fighting. Whether or not you agree is a matter of opinion, but if you ask me, all the ingredients are here. I mean, what else has Nintendo made that could even count? I should have played Splatoon. I didn't really think about Pokemon battles until a Watch Mojo video of all things brought up Pokemon battles in their fake sports videos, and while I didn't want to steal all their ideas, I thought this one was pretty interesting to think about. Would Pokemon battles even count as a sport if they were real? I'll give a pretty confident no, because the role of the trainer is more or less of a game of knowledge, though the Pokemon Stadium definitely gives the battles their highest form of excitement. I figure something more like Pokemon Unite might be better for the fake sport category. It takes the online battle arena genre and adds a Pokemon literally dunking balls through hoops in a game that is played nothing like basketball, and has a better presentation of the whole sport thing. What really separates it for me is the fact that different Pokemon have different playstyles, for instance Garchomp being a rush-down attacker versus something like Snorlax being a slow, damaged, absorbing tank that pairs really well with glass cannons, sort of like having different positions within a sports team. The game's primary objective involves taking energy balls and scoring them on different hoops in each lane of the defense. And it may be pushing the definition of fake sport. I think there's enough back and forth in each game that may provide enough evidence in favor, so long as you believe that the Pokemon are athletes acting on their own free will instead of just being told how to battle by a trainer, which doesn't even really count as a coach, as the trainer does just dictate the entire flow. I don't know. There's an argument for both sides here, but I think Pokemon Unite is a great way to demonstrate a Pokemon sport of all things. Pokemon Unite does start to draw away from the fake sport taking center stage mechanically and fall more into a genre of game built with Pokemon skins around it. Similarly, the game Splitgate 2 acts very much as a first-person shooter as its primary genre, with a gimmick of being able to shoot 2 portals around to give the players more dynamic movements and cover options. However, within the universe of the game, the player competes within these matches in different arenas run by a league called the Seoul Splitgate League, or SSL for short, which acts as a sort of organization for the sport, much like NBA, EPL, MLB, etc. The primary mode I think fits the directive of fake sport would be the split ball game mode, which acts as a capture the flag style of game mode where you have to capture the opponent's split balls from their base and run them back to your own base to earn a point, and whoever has the most points at the end wins. There's also a Battle Royale mode that within the universe of Splitgate probably acts more along the lines of a Hunger Games style of entertainment to the crowd, but in both scenarios the SSL and arena factors of it tend to take a backseat to the actual gameplay, which for the most part is the first-person shooter mechanics. There is an announcer, but I more often listen to the man in the earpiece giving objectives to guide my playstyle. Likewise, when I'm playing a mode like Domination, there's not really much that reminds me I'm playing in a league for the entertainment of the Splitgate civilians, and just feel like I'm playing another wartime shooter like Battlefield or Halo. I don't want to come across like I'm just hating on the work that was put into the universe by the devs, because there was clearly a lot of thought that went into the lore and backstory of this Portal Call of Duty hybrid, and dressing it in this SSL arena aesthetic does give the game a unique personality to stand out instead of the other wartime shooters. The Portals also do give a lot of extra variety compared to the other stuff that's out there, but it still is an FPS game dressed in a sport or a game show suit and not a game built around its own mechanics. I'd almost be more interested in a game mode where you are competing in activities similar to sports, like Splitball for instance, but without the bullets in the gun aspect. Having arenas for just Portal sports would be a very fresh way to make some very interesting and fun gameplay moments. Maybe stick to a melee style of combat, or have the arena be raised up to allow creative ways to launch opponents off the side to temporarily incapacitate them. Just some food for thought. Now, this might be the furthest I deviate from the idea of fake sport within a video game, as if anything, Fall Guys, and to a lesser extent Stumble Guys, really acts more like a game show instead of a sport. Yes, you do end up racing the other Fall Guys in a direct competition for a Battle Royale style format, but it more often than not comes across as an obstacle course game, more akin to the popular Wipeout TV show. I did want to talk about it because there is an element of running and jumping that in most cases is a race against other opponents, and there is a crowd that roars when you qualify. In between rounds, you see those who didn't qualify fall off in a very stylistic presentation, to say the least. The mechanics of Fall Guys don't really go deeper than run, jump, and the occasional grab, so any changes made to your bean is simply cosmetic. All that being said, it's a game that I can really only describe as fun, and it gets everything right that it's looking to achieve. I don't think Fall Guys is aiming to be a fake sport, but rather just present itself in a way that mimics entertainment. The final game I'm going to talk about is in fact a fake sport that is made into a video game, that being Quidditch in the Quidditch Champion game that takes place within the Harry Potter Wizarding World universe. If you've read the books or seen the movies, you'll know that Quidditch is very clearly a sport in the Wizarding World played at all levels of skill, and competition getting as high as the Quidditch World Cup is a very big deal. While Quidditch as a concept existed before its inclusion in video games, Quidditch Champions gives the sport a way to exist for people like you and me to engage with it aside from the way it has been adapted into our so-called Muggle world with our flightless brooms and whatnot. It is frankly just really cool that we have a way to engage with wizard sports taking directly from its book and movie source. That being said, Quidditch was never designed with becoming a video game in mind. It was invented so that Harry Potter could participate in a sport within the confines of his story in the books. Therefore, the translation from the page to the big screen is good because the cinematography allows for the director to show the scenes, to show the audience exactly what they need to see at any given moment, whereas the video game comes across as busy. This is by no fault of the dev team, really, because they did everything they could to make the game as accessible as possible. In Quidditch as it's written, there's 3 chasers as your primary scorers, 2 beaters to act as defenders, 1 keeper, or goalie, and 1 seeker that chases a golden snitch while the rest of the game plays out. In Quidditch Champions, there's 6 members per team instead of 7, with 1 beater being subtracted. Catching the golden snitch is worth 30 points instead of a staggering 150, and does not end the game upon its catch. The game instead ends when the team reaches 100 points or the time limit expires. The problem I find here for me is that there's just too much going on at too large of a scale. And while there are plenty of visual markers to help identify the quaffle, snitch, bludgers, teammates, opponents, it just becomes visually overloading, and I personally found it difficult to identify what exactly I was looking at versus what I was looking for. The most success I found for myself was playing as the Seeker, as there's only one thing to worry about: the snitch. And since it nets the most points, why wouldn't I try to chase it down every time I could? This led to mostly just trying to score fast break quaffle points or turning the ball over until I could play as the Seeker again. Rinse and repeat. It was fun to play the sport I had read about when I was a kid, but the game frankly doesn't have the staying power mechanically that games like Rocket League or Lethal League have on me. One thing I do appreciate, however, is the Rocket League-esque level of customization, from clothing and outfits to the broom trails and even the goal explosions remind me a lot of the same deep level of personal customization that Rocket League gives, and if nothing else, I'll give them that. Video games are a way to engage with an art form so directly, and when the possibilities are near infinite, only stifled by creativity, I really enjoy seeing what truly passionate and creative developers are able to come up with. As real-life sports titles get churned out on a yearly basis with the same recycled engines and microtransaction tactics, I find an amount of solace in that some teams are able to reinvent what it means to be an e-sport. Ultimately, basketball and Halo at the end of the day are just games. Who says you have to be a Canadian physician to invent our next major pastime? After all, the world seems more interested in digital spaces now more than ever, and with the real-world decline in viewing numbers in sports like baseball, maybe something that's optimized to the modern audience can take the world by storm and redefine what it means to classify as a sport. Thanks for watching. There wasn't really too much of a point on this one. Just wanted to talk about some games that I've been playing recently. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. Let me know what ones I missed in the comments. Like I said, that Watch Mojo video covered a lot of different subjects, so maybe it was in that video that I didn't want to put into my own video to copy them too much. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I got more stuff cooking that I can't wait to share with you guys. Peace.